Hey everybody, I have some exciting news to share with you. Here at Rock Harbor, we are going to be hosting a prophecy conference on October 4th. It's a Saturday, and it's going to be right here in Bakersfield at Rock Harbor Church. And we're going to have a prophecy conference about the apostasy of the church. But we're not only going to talk about what's going on in a negative way in the church and how the church is losing its grip with the culture and not contending for the faith. We're going to talk about ways in which we as individual Christians can re-engage in the fight and battle through what's happening not only in the West but around the world. And so we're going to have a great cast of speakers and some top-notch guys that I have lined up, and they're going to have a one-day shot of not only exposing what's going on, but equipping us in, okay, what can I do to be salt and light? How can I go about confronting this that I see in my churches, that I see in my community, that the church is not doing and the pastors are not doing? We are having a leadership deficit. And so we hope from this conference to encourage many people at the grassroots level to take ownership and say, hey, look, will you be able to take out the truth and contend for the faith, be salt and light, because the churches are not doing it anymore. The pastors are not doing it anymore. So it comes down to our responsibility. And so that's what we're geared up for. And it's going to be great. You're going to be blessed, and you're going to walk away fully equipped to be able to handle this culture. And so hopefully mark down your calendars that hopefully you can attend in person, but if not, we'll have a live stream for your event, for anyone that can't make it. And it will, either way, it'll be a blessing for you. So mark the date, October 4th. It's a Saturday here in Bakersfield, California at Rock Harbor Church. Hope to see you then. Hey everybody, welcome to Tip of the Spear, and as always, we're trying to bring the best voices out there to comment on the things that are happening in our world, not only from a biblical perspective, but also a prophetic perspective. And today I have one of my good friends, James Kaddis, Pastor James Kaddis. He is the founding and senior pastor of Calvary Chapel Signal Hill in Southern California. He's got about 30 years of ministry experience, and he serves as a police chaplain as well. He's a good friend of mine. He's very pro-Israel, and he is a first-generation American of Egyptian descent. Yep. So he has a very unique background that lends itself to helping us understand, especially the Middle East. And so he brings this unique perspective, combining his theology and law and technology and sharing those kinds of insights to kind of be a light in this darkness. And he's on various platforms. He has a radio ministry. And man, his take on the Middle East and politics and the mindset of the Middle East is beyond normal, man. He brings so much clarity to what's going on, and it will help us. And today we're going to talk about a lot of things that involve Islam and the Islamization of Europe and the West. And so James is going to be able to talk about that. So anyway, James, thanks for joining us, my friend. Great to have you here, man.
Glad to be here, brother. It's been a long time coming, so I'm excited to be a part of things. And obviously, we always have a lot of fun when we get together.
We sure be a blessing. we did in Santa Barbara a couple weeks back, and had a good time seeing you, man. And I'm glad you're able to come on the show, man. I know you're really busy, but man, it's like I was telling the audience, man, you have a great insight, and I want to pick your brain. Hey, for some people that may not know you, give them a synopsis of your background and that unique background that blends so well to what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the founding and senior pastor of Calvary Chapel Signal Hill. I've been teaching the Bible for almost 33, 34 years, maybe a little bit more than that. I'd have to go back and count. My mom and my dad were both born and raised in Egypt. Obviously, Arabic was my second language at home. That gave me a general love for biblical languages, and I've always been very interested in the region. So when it comes to geopolitical analysis of all things, Middle East, Bible prophecy related, could be Europe. I have a very, very abnormal interest for lack of a better term in it all.
Right.
And so it does on a lot of levels come naturally to me. And I think that that's all by the grace of God. I mean, God's given me a lot of understanding and awareness of these things. And it's a lot of fun because look, we're living in the greatest time to be alive right now because we're watching God's word come to life in ways we never thought possible.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate what I get to do. You know, we have millions of people who watch us on YouTube, and I think we're on, I don't even remember the number of radio stations now we've hit. I think we're close to 400 radio stations around the world.
Wow.
And God has just blessed us so much. But the things that come my way from the many listeners that are bringing news, it's like it's poof. You just have no idea that some of this stuff is going on. And as much as me and you are engaged in all of this stuff, nothing seems to be off the table anymore.
Right.
It's just wild. We're hearing all kinds of new news. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, no, and that background, man, really lends itself into you speaking into a lot of what's happening in Europe and the West. And one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about is the Islamization of not only Europe and now we're starting to see places in Texas, that they're wanting to build a 400-acre Islamic, I don't know what you want to call it, their own compound. I don't know what you want to call it. And we're seeing these different parts of it in America happening. And James, I wanted you to speak into that. And, I hear all these dissenting voices, these leftist voices saying, you guys have nothing to worry about. You guys are just Islamophobic and don't believe your lying eyes. Can you speak to what in the world, let's start in Europe. What has led to this Islamization of Europe? Because I traveled to Europe. I've seen the different places. James, the last place I was in is Europe. I was in Frankfurt, Germany. Walked out, and it was totally Islamicized. I didn't see any Germans. I saw all these young Muslim men running all through Frankfurt. Yeah. And I can't figure that out. What happened over there? Two
major variables. Okay. Number one, and it is like critically important that everybody understands this. And then there's an underlying tone that we're going to have to address, which oftentimes is not addressed by a lot of people. And I don't know why. I think maybe some people are scared to address it. I know you've addressed it. It's one aspect of this that doesn't even get discussed enough. But Christianity is still the largest religion in the world, okay? First and foremost. Now, a lot of people think that it's Islam because people say it's the fastest growing religion. But one variable of this that we have to actually put into light, and that is the fact that the only reason why Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world is because they are growing it by birth, basically. Yeah. They're having lots of children, marrying lots of wives. That's what, in essence, you're seeing in Europe. Now, what's making it uniquely difficult to deal with is as the population of Arab Muslims is growing in Europe, you're also seeing what appears to be a very concerted effort to suppress Christian voices and Christian action. So when you take those two, you open up a door to a world that I don't think a single European lawmaker ever intended to open. And then you have another problem, and that's the idea of deception in Islam. And the fact that it is primarily predicated, all of the beliefs taught in Islam are fundamentally predicated upon deception. There's one passage in the Qur'an that says, وَمَكْرُ مَكْرَ اللَّهُ وَإِلَّهُ خَيْرَ الْمَكَرِينَ. And in Arabic, what that basically means is it means that Allah is in essence the chief of deceivers. That's the Qur'an that says that. But there's so much more about this. Like you even just look at the simple arguments for the validity of the Qur'an or the existence of the Qur'an as a legitimate historical document. That in and of itself is completely debatable. As a matter of fact, I can make a very aggressive and almost irrefutable, actually, I would say an irrefutable argument that the Muhammad of Islam didn't even exist. If you really think about it, in the Qur'an itself, we see the mention, they say Muhammad is mentioned 4 times. No, he's not. It's the Arabic word Muhammad, not Muhammad, and Muhammad actually is very likely a reference to the Messiah, okay? And Islam is, in essence, I actually believe, not some world religion that kind of grew or erected from some solemn place. It actually is a heretical teaching of Christianity dating back to the early Ottoman Empire and perhaps a little bit before that time. It's kind of scary when you think about it, because the perhaps the most credible or recent extant manuscript that we have of the Qur'an is very likely dated sometime around 900 AD. And when you think about that, Muhammad died in the early 600s. So you're talking about the most recent extant manuscript, or the oldest extant manuscript that we have, is 300 years after Muhammad died. And when you talk about the Hadith, it's really fun. I think it's hilarious how you mention the Hadith, or how you mention Texas, because the guy who's leading this movement in Texas, Yasser Qadi, is also the same guy that says he cannot prove the historicity of the Hadith. He actually says, basically, that the Hadith is not credible based on the reasonable arguments that get made to establish the validity of a specific manuscript.
Wow.
So he basically, in essence, told the Islamic world that Muhammad isn't even a credible person, because, like, think about it. When people wake up in the morning and they hear these Islamic prayers, if you're living in an Islamic country, or you're living in a place where they allow people to pray in these mosques, you'll wake up and you'll hear something to the effect of "Salatu khayran min an-nawm, Allahu Akbar, Muhammad Rasulullah," meaning it's better to pray than to sleep. Muhammad, or Allah, is greater, and Muhammad is his prophet. That's a typical chant you'll hear in the morning. Here's the thing that's really funny. Those prayers are not taught in the Qur'an. Those prayers come from other documents that actually teach that type of prayer, and even then it's very loosely footed. So much of this is fundamentally predicated upon the idea of deception, none of which makes any kind of sense. And also, it's even more hilarious because when you see these clowns in Europe, like Muhammad Hijab, who continues to talk about the fact that you're not really a real Muslim, or you don't really understand the core tenets of Islam if you can't speak Arabic like me, or you don't know Arabic, when in reality, 17% of the Islamic world at best knows Arabic or speaks Arabic.
Wow.
17%. So let's just get real for a second and talk about the fact that an overwhelming majority of what we're seeing is fictitious. And when the very moment that these leaders in Europe recognize that they don't understand Islam, they don't understand our people, they don't understand our culture, they don't understand our language, they have no clue, then they, and only then, will they be able to deal with this correctly. It's the same problem we're seeing in Israel, and it's the same problem we're seeing everywhere else. Like these ignorant college students that run around and talk about free Palestine. If they were in Gaza City for 2 minutes, they'd all be dead. And that's the thing that people don't understand. They don't know these things.
Right. You're making a good point, because the understanding of Islam, and this is where I want to tap into your expertise. They'll try to make a case of, well, Brandon, James, that's just the jihadis, what you guys are talking about. But the most of them are peaceful Muslims. They don't want to cause any problems. They're patriotic. And can you speak to that? Because that seems to be the leftist mantra that they always keep saying. Yeah.
The only peaceful Muslims that are out there are the ignorant ones. And when I say the ignorant ones, meaning ignorant of what the Qur'an tells them. You and I are what I would call biblical fundamentalists. We believe in the fundamentals of the Bible. You've got a list that you have on your website where you tell people, hey, these are the churches you can trust in.
Yeah.
These are the places you can go. Those decisions as to who goes on your list is based on, are they biblically aligned with the fundamentals that the Bible teaches? Well, if you are a biblical fundamentalist, then you believe in the many things that we continue to contend for, whether it be the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, whether it be salvation, the way salvation comes to us, all those things. If you are a fundamentalist of the Qur'an, then you believe in deception, you believe in growing by force, you believe in death, you believe in all of the things that we're seeing manifesting and materializing right now. And the worst part about it is the deception that's involved in Islam is so darn good because it's the father of lies who inspires it. And that explains why Israel is losing the media battle right now. That explains why lots of people are losing the media battle. Because if I am an Islamic fundamentalist, then I believe in the fundamentals of Islam. And if I believe in the fundamentals of the Qur'an, well, then that means I believe in you dying. And I can translate again and again and again and again and again all of these interviews that you see coming out of Al Jazeera and all of these other places where you see these Hamas leaders basically saying, we have no interest in a two-state solution. All we want is min maharabat, meaning from the river to the sea. We want these people to be destroyed, because if we have a two-state solution, then that means we recognize the Zionist entity that we do not accept. And even in their own charter, it is the destruction of every single Jewish life that's out there, and eventually every American life. And yes, if they have it their way, every single Western European life.
Well, you know, and that's, you hit the nail on the head on that, because what is going on with leftist, communist, Marxist, socialists, because they seem to ignore that which you just said, and seem to take seriously what these people believe. Is there some type of cognitive dissonance that they're having when you tell them this? Or is this an agenda to use Islam to destroy the West?
Yeah, this is kind of a difficult picture because many people don't understand some of the, for lack of a better term, some of the difficulties that are oftentimes associated with the complexity that's been created as a result of the deception that exists.
Okay.
The reason why voices like Mamdani's are winning and lots of other people is because so much of what you see in these communist movements, in these social circle movements, identify directly with much of Islam. Now, some people will say, well, how in the world can that be the case? How in the world can they identify with Islam? Well, it's not that you're talking about like some thought for thought principle that's taking place. No, it's open doors that are created from these views that create this type of situation that we're looking at. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. You see these lies that continue to be communicated on a day-to-day basis. And then you have these people on top of that add to the lies when you begin to see some of these beliefs manifested. Let's take Mamdani for example, okay? Because he's a perfect example of the problem that we continue to see, okay? Right. Mamdani says something like this. He says, well, there's no billionaires. That's something that he says. He says it on a regular basis. He says that, and matter of fact, on Meet the Press, he made a comment like this. He says that the world is wrecked by inequality. We shouldn't have billionaires. And he calls for some kind of like a 2 percentage point surcharge in the top 1% of earners. And then he talks about municipal ownership of basic services. So, you know, you're talking about this removal of anything that makes anybody money. Yeah. So the problem here is the fact that when you start looking at these ideas that he quotes, you would think, oh, that's just hardcore Marxist and it has nothing to do with Islam. Really? Well, think about the fact that when you begin to understand where Mamdani comes from, then look up this name, Mahmoud Mamdani, okay? Who is a Ugandan-born scholar who will tell you that there is a bridge that exists between Marxist theory and Islam as it's being communicated.
Wow.
And that's something that people just don't get.
Yeah.
So when you begin to see all this campus era, you know, Marxist and Leninist activism, you are looking at engagement that is, in essence, the predicate value that has to be laid in order to push forward so much of what you're seeing in Islam. This is why, by the way, you can go on a public campus right now and they're supporting Hamas. And this is why they're doing Islamic prayers in the courtyard as they are so-called standing, for lack of a better term, in consolidation of some weird mentality that says, oh, we support this because these are oppressed people like us. No, actually, you're useful idiots.
Yeah.
You don't get it. You don't understand how it gets put together. It's a very difficult thing for people to be able to see.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I just keep seeing these guys like Mamdani and others that they're in partnership with communism. He's a self-avowed communist and an Islamicist. And I keep seeing this connection. And, Trevor Loudon mentioned this a long time. He called it the red-green axis. And I just see them as strange bedfellows. But it seems to be, to me, and you tell me what you think, what is their end goal? Is it to destroy the West? Is it to destroy Christianity? To establish a caliphate? What is their end goal in all of this?
Well, I mean, I think caliphate has a little bit to do with it. I think the bigger picture is that that question requires a specific context, right?
Yes.
You have to ask yourself, based on the person you're looking at, what does that mean? Okay. Yeah. And this is why I think that Bible teachers should be the best geopolitical analysis in the world. Because the way I would answer that question is I would analyze Revelation chapter 6, for example. Okay. In the book of Revelation, we read about these seals. And this is, of course, when Christ takes back the title deed to the earth. Right. And many of you understand how this works. But you have these first four seals that are open. You've got the white horse and the rider of the white horse. You've got what comes next, the red horse. You've got the black horse. And then, of course, you've got the pale horse. Yeah. Now, this is important to understand because what this is a picture of is a model that we continue to see being carried on by the enemy, and the overall picture is built upon what we see in these seals. So the white horse, of course, we know the white horse is symbolic of, or not symbolic, speaks to us of the coming Antichrist.
Sure.
But you would look at the parallel in today's form, and it's a totalitarian rule. So it starts with totalitarian rule. Now notice, he's got a bow, he doesn't have an arrow, which in essence means that what he does is he chooses to create the element of the revolution by the accompaniment of some form of manipulation that produces mass formation psychosis. It's that kind of a thing, right? Where people all begin to buy into the same lie. Then, of course, in order to seal it in, you have to bring in the red horse, which, of course, is war. Once war is ensued, then you have what I believe to be the elimination of, in essence, the middle class and the creation of a rich ruling class, while the institution of destruction for basic human needs gets put into play. And that's where you have economic failure. That's the rider of the black horse.
Right.
And it's ironic because when you read about the rider of the black horse, there's a little statement that says, hey, don't mess with the oil and the wine. Well, what that basically speaks of is this rich ruling class that will continue to walk in this sort of invincible sort of a mindset where they control things based on the destruction of the world around them. And then, of course, what happens is death. Now, this is really important to understand because in the book of Revelation, that death, in essence, the result of all of these things, totalitarian rule, war, economic failure, is going to produce the death of a quarter of the world's population. That could be 3 billion people. Sure. If you look at the same pattern being expressed today in today's world, over the last, I would say, 100 years, we've seen easily 300 million people die as a result of this pattern. The difference here is what we see in Revelation will be what happens when the restrainer is removed in the rapture, as it says in 2 Thessalonians. And of course, the Antichrist comes into play and does everything that he's supposed to, that the Bible says he's going to do. So the whole idea here is that the bigger picture, like you're looking at it from a blimp. Yeah. The bigger picture here is you're seeing Satan doing the same thing that he normally does in seeking to destroy mankind. And the end game of all of this is to really put into play the spirit of Antichrist in a way that allows these types of subversions to take place quite effectively. And that's what we're seeing right now, whether it be through the use of AI, whether it be through some of the things we're seeing in Europe, some of the things we're seeing all over the world. Look, the spirit of Antichrist is here. And when we talk about anti, it's not anti meaning against, it's anti meaning instead of. And so we are removing the collective consciousness of God in humanity by convincing humans that they themselves are now God. And that's exactly what this is all about.
Gotcha.
So what we're looking at is based on all of this stuff right here.
James, excellent point. I want to now pivot. I want to go geopolitical in a little bit, but I want to pivot to the church real quick because you mentioned Yasser Qadhi. And Yasser Qadhi, if I recall, was involved in so-called interfaith dialogue. And I think James White was involved in that and whatever. He's been part of that. And then we've seen the Yale document under Rick Warren a long time ago with this whole, we worship the same God. Where is the church at on this as far as understanding? I mean, what good does it serve James White to have the interfaith dialogue with Yasser Qadhi? What is, from the Islamic standpoint, what is their goal on that?
So, look, this in essence goes back to just the overall picture of Islam. This is a very, very difficult picture for people to be able to understand. It's very, very hard because Islam is based on deception, and this is the enemy's tool. This is what he does. He's very, very good, at this. And so people need to understand the fact that is this overall picture, this interfaith dialogue nonsense, this stuff with Rick Warren. I mean, in all honesty, very, very evil. Now, I think Rick Warren may have fallen in the useful idiot category, in the sense that he doesn't understand the full implications of what he's giving himself to because he's so blinded by the raw ambition to want to grow and become bigger. So I'm not going to call him one of these guys that's like, legitimately nefarious. Right. But when you start looking at people like Qadhi, you're talking about some seriously nefarious action that's beginning to take place. Now, what's interesting with Yasser Qadhi is he's living in two worlds right now. He's living in the world of Islam that blindly accepts lots of things as fact that are not fact, and he's also living in the academic world where he wants to be taken seriously for his academic pursuits. He is by far one of the greatest and most respected scholars in Islam. Now, that's changing because of some of the things that he has said over the last few years, but the scholarship is catching up with Islam right now. And as a matter of fact, that goes to the geopolitics of it all. It goes right back to all of this. Now, the problem here is that Christians and what's happening with the church, they're buying into this lie because they have not allowed themselves to be open to the truth, even at the expense of their own fears and insecurities. We saw this really be magnified with what happened during COVID because tons of people shut their churches down, spiritual direction was lost, and probably 40% of the churches that are still around, or maybe even 50 to as high as 60% of the churches that are around, these are churches that are pastored by men that can't even be trusted by their fellowship because these men ran away and cowered during the time where you weren't supposed to be fearful of your life.
Right.
So it's very difficult. And of course, they went out and they went down the Andy Stanley route. They went down all these other routes that were just completely broken. And so they bought into the lies that we continue to see communicated here by the social justice environment, all these other things. And so the church became weak because the church did not invest themselves in the scriptures, and they refused to get involved in things like the political arena, not recognizing the fact that the political arena is a legitimate extension of the pulpit. And I think that people don't get that. And as a result, that's why Christianity have become weak. Christians have become weak. Yeah. And by the way, this all falls into the useful idiot category because when they're not taught, when they don't know the word, when they can't identify the truth, they believe everything as correct. And that's when you see all this stuff break open.
Excellent point. Excellent point. One more question before we go to geopolitics. I keep hearing, YouTube pundits. I guess that's the term I'll use. And they do recognize, like I think I saw Jordan Peterson try to interview an Islamic scholar in England or whatnot, and I can't remember the guy's name.
He's not really a scholar. He's a fake. That's it's Muhammad Hijab. You give me 5 minutes with Muhammad Hijab, and he would scream and yell and go nuts and then walk away from the interview because he does not want to deal with the truth. He sounds convincing because he has his little Oxford accent,
Right.
but those of us that understand what's really going on look at him as a liar, a wife abuser. I mean, he is the embodiment of what you see in a lot of Islam, and he's not even all that much of a scholar. He's actually quite a liar. I made many videos on him, by the way. Challenged him before. He won't talk to me.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with that guy. But here's the thing I think I want you to comment on. So Jordan Peterson walked away from that, and then I guess his comments afterwards were, if Islam is going to make it or be able to move into the 21st century, it's got to reform its views.
Yeah.
Here's the question. And he left it like that. Peterson didn't try to answer it or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he did say that they cannot they cannot keep practicing something from the 7th century.
Yeah.
In your opinion, can Islam reform?
No.
Okay, there it is. That's the simple answer. It cannot.
And it won't. Nobody in Islam wants to reform. They're fundamentalists. Listen, when you read a passage that says that Allah is the chief of deceivers, I mean, where do you go from there? I mean, this is not a difficult principle. And by the way, this is something that's all over the Qur'an. This is not like some place where you just see it a little bit. Deception is all over the Qur'an, and a lot of people don't get that. They don't recognize it, but this is what they do. So whether or not anybody wants to admit it, I mean, that's how it goes. Now, scholarship is catching up to this, and that's why some of the more notable world leaders are beginning to abandon it or make it subjective.
Okay.
And it's genuinely not part of their lies or their ruse. Even Saudi Arabia is doing that. Yeah. But it is a very broken model if you follow it.
Okay.
By the way, this is the very reason why the overwhelming majority of those who debate on behalf of Islam spend an overwhelming majority of their time attacking Christianity. They attack nobody else except Christianity. Why?
Interesting.
Because they are a cult of Christianity. They literally began as a heresy of Christian teaching. Islam started by attacking the Trinity. That's in essence what Islam started. That's how it started. So you'll find supposedly, which I think are all fake, but you'll find supposedly old writings where Muhammad is talking about the credibility of the Jewish people and all that. They're all lies. They're all fairy tales.
Amazing. Wow. That's great. Great insight. So now, let's shift to geopolitics, okay?
Yep.
And so we saw Trump go and try to do deals with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and even brought in Sharar from Syria, which he's supposedly a inclusive jihadist, which I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't even call him that name. I actually, the only way I refer to him is Julani. Tahir al-Shem still is that whole Syria discussion is a wild one. That's all Turkey, by the way.
Right.
We can spend some time talking about that.
They had Erdogan on the phone in one of those meetings that they had with Trump there.
Yep.
And so, he's totally behind that. So here's my thing. If you were to advise President Trump, what would you tell him about Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and obviously Turkey? It's like, I don't know if Trump just sees these as financial transactions and not understanding the Islamic background. Because, I mean, and I know Qatar funds all kinds of jihadist things.
So I think that what Trump did, actually, believe it or not, when he went on that tour in the Arabian Peninsula, I actually thought it was genius. Okay. I'm very different from what a lot of people think about what he did. A lot of people look at him and go, oh, well, Trump's a traitor. He shouldn't have done this or whatever. But most people that say that just don't understand, like I said, our part of the world. They don't understand the region. They don't understand what's going on. You have to go back to the original Trump administration.
Okay.
You have to go back to what he tried to do back then. If you remember, the very first place that Trump went to was Saudi Arabia on his first tour when he was president first time around.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose behind what he did, we know this now, we didn't quite know it well at the time, was he sat down and he basically got together with 17 Arab countries, all of which were enemies of Iran. And he said, look, I'm just gonna make myself clear right now. If you want security guarantees, if you're concerned about the activity that you're seeing in the Red Sea, when you start to, you're looking at the problems in the Gulf of Aden, when you're looking at the problem that Djibouti is creating as a result of the pathway that takes you past Eritrea and the Sudan and Egypt into the Suez Canal, if you're concerned about security issues in the Persian Gulf, if you're worried about the Arabian Sea and eventually the Indian Ocean, if you're concerned about how trade is going to continue on across from Pakistan and India and Afghanistan and all these things going on, well, you have to deal with the Iran problem.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to deal with the Iran problem if you don't stand together, and you're not going to be able to stand together unless you involve Israel. So the president of the United States convinced all of these Arab nations to stand with Israel. Now, there's something to be said about Qatar's involvement in all of this, because Qatar was one of the nations that basically resisted this. What a lot of people don't know about this early on during the first Trump administration was that Saudi Arabia became vocally in opposition to Qatar's existence, basically.
Really?
And the reason why they did that was because they said, look, we've gave them official notice. You can't support terrorist activity. You've got to stop doing this. You are part of one of the Gulf Coalition Council states. You need to do what we're having you to do. And if you don't want to do that, we want nothing to do with you. We watched Saudi Arabia's foreign minister basically get up there and say, we want nothing to do with them. And if the Emirates continue to give them any kind of attention on the other side of the Gulf, then we're going to take issue with the Emirates. And it was around that time where the UAE basically, with the pressuring of the Saudi royal family, the Emirates came in and signed this agreement for normalization with Israel. And when all of that started happening, the Middle Eastern countries began to go back to Trump and say, well, we've got a problem, and the problem is Palestine. We have to have some sort of a statehood solution. So Trump says, I'm telling you right now, there's no way you're going to make that happen, because you know this, I know this, we all know this. They don't want statehood. They want to take over Israel, and we just can't do that. Right. I can't do it as America. They can't do it. So, well, no, we have to have a solution. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's, as a function of normalization, let's promise the Palestinian Authority that we will give them a portion of East Jerusalem, which, by the way, is like, what? No way. Israel's like, no way. Trump goes to Israel and says, hey, I'm proving a point here. So they go, they make the offer. Very few people know about this offer. And the Palestinian Authority said, shove it. Yeah. We want nothing to do with this. This is all before what happened on October the 7th. Hamas was kind of docile at this point. There were still a few back and forth. And so Saudi Arabia is the big gun that gets approached here and is told, listen, Mohammed bin Salman, you want to be a part of the G7. You've always been shooting from the G7. Okay, the G20 is not enough for you. You want to be a part of the G7. You'll never get there unless you normalize with Israel. So what does MBS do? MBS starts encouraging all of these other states that are around him, part of the council coalition, to go and to start working through normalization. Series of security guarantees were made, rightly so, and then President Trump lost the election. Now, I'm going to say lost the election. We all know what I mean when I say lost the election.
I do too.
Yeah, we got to be very careful about how we say it, because we're on YouTube or whatever. But here's my point. When that happened, Joe Biden did the single most damaging thing that any president could do who comes in new. Within day 2 or day 3, President Biden declared the Yemeni Houthis as no longer an enemy combatant of the United States and no longer as a terrorist organization designee. Now, the problem with that is that did more damage to Saudi Arabia than any other country, even more than Israel. Why? Because Saudi Arabia is at war to the south with the Yemeni Houthis. It's the proxy war that they're having to fight instead of fighting Iran directly. So the problem that creates is the Yemeni Houthis are no longer terrorist designations, which now means that Saudi Arabia can no longer use 48% of all of its weaponry, whether it be offensive or defensive, because all of it is American. And there are American rules that say when you buy American technology, you can't use it against somebody that we consider to be an ally.
Yeah.
So in this case, well, Yemen is not an ally, but at the same time, they're not considered a combatant, so you can't use that. So basically, he completely disabled Saudi Arabia. And in doing so, everybody in the Gulf Coast Coalition states all said, we don't trust America. We're all on our own. And that's why all of them started running into the arms of Russia. This is, by the way, the whole reason why Libya is now pretty much under Russian control and possession via the civil war that's been going on, because all of these mechanisms come together by the reckless behavior of the worst president, probably the worst president in United States history.
Agreed.
So when President Trump goes back to Saudi Arabia, it was by far one of the most brilliant moves that he could have ever made. The very first day that he was in the Oval Office, I watched him, and I guarantee you it was a reporter that planted that. I guarantee you a reporter was asked to do this. The reporter asked about, are you going to go to Saudi Arabia first? And the president said, well, if Saudi Arabia invests in, $400 or $500 billion like they did last time, yeah, then maybe I'll go. And guess what? Saudi Arabia the next day says, we're going to make an investment in the United States of America. So that was Saudi's way of signaling, we're ready to talk. Let's go. Yeah. And he goes and he speaks to all of the Gulf Coast states. Why would he do that? Is he doing that because he's turning his back on Israel? If he was turning his back on Israel, he wouldn't have bombed Iran.
Right.
The reason why he did that was because he needed to make ironclad agreements that prevent Saudi Arabia or any of the Gulf Coast coalition states from entering into the same security problem that they had entered into before. You'll notice he gave nuclear technology for their AI plants to Saudi Arabia. He put in defense systems for all of them. He upgraded. The largest weapons defense deal ever made in United States history in the Middle East was made with these Gulf Coast states. And what most people don't realize is because of the way the law works, that means that Israel becomes the beneficiary of it all. They get the upgrades because the rule is if I sell these guys a 5th generation fighter, Israel has to have a 6th generation fighter. That's the way it works. Yeah. So what he did was absolutely brilliant because in essence, it took him 5 days to convince every single one of these leaders, you need to be on board with us because what we're about to do is change the face of the Middle East. And if you want to get wealthier and you want to be a part of it, then you roll with us. If you don't, then we're done. Yeah. And so that's exactly what happened. And what it also did was it pretty much cut Qatar off at the knees. Everybody says, oh, no, this made Qatar famous. No, President Trump helped Qatar to actually save face by accepting that plane on behalf of the United States of America, which, by the way, is no big deal because our largest air base, which is in the Middle East right now, is in Qatar, and that airbase was given to us, okay, by them. So, this was him allowing them to save face because of all the ridiculousness that they've done, and it also enabled Saudi Arabia, who is presumably the leader of the Gulf Coast, whether anybody wants to call them that, they are. They're the leader of the Coalition Council, the Gulf Coalition Council, the GCC. Right. They really are the leaders. So everybody rolls with them. And in essence, what President Trump basically did was he gave the power to them to basically shut the mouths of Qatar in the midst of some of the cooperation they've been seeing with Iran. And what it also did was it opened up the door for the new trade routes that they've been able to develop. And it put Israel in the most advantageous position that it has been in the last 50 years.
Wow. That's great analyzing.
It was brilliant. I think that what the president did was absolutely brilliant. Anybody that knows the Middle East understands it. By the way, on his way back, he goes to Syria and he basically forces, in essence, normalization with Israel, while at the same time giving Turkey an opportunity to basically, for lack of a better term, colonize Syria. And the reason why that becomes advantageous is because it allows a vacuum to not be filled, especially in the northern portion of Syria, where the Kurdish activity is taking place. And it makes Erdogan very happy, especially because of the disbandment of the PKK, which has been Erdogan's big enemy, which the PKK got much stronger when Obama put into effect what we all call the Arab Spring. Right. And in essence, what that did was it put Turkey on the map to have to behave a lot more diplomatically, especially as the largest military in NATO outside of the United States of America. And in essence, what that did was it put together a much stronger coalition to be broken. It also put Russia on the map in the ability of Russia to save face as it interacts with the Middle East, and sort of minimizes in a way what's happening in what's happening with Russia right now with respect to Ukraine. So that is Ezekiel 38 in the making, basically, but that's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. Right. But more importantly and more consequentially and a lot more significantly, what the president did in essence with Turkey and what he did with Syria and what he's doing right now with Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Oman and all of these other countries is in essence the reverse engineering of the Arab Spring. Okay. That's basically what he's doing.
Amazing. That's amazing. And I've never seen anybody, I mean, just talking about Trump himself, I mean, this guy, he goes and meets with Putin in Alaska, and he's doing all of this, and I've never seen a president do something like this.
Right, yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing.
Yep.
And then, of course, he helped Israel take out the nuclear installations in Iran. Where does that go from here with Iran? I got a couple more minutes, James, but what do you think? Where does Iran go from here after we've done that and Israel has done that to them?
It forces what I would call an amicable peace, okay, that they object to, okay, or it forces regime change, one or the other. Okay. Both of them can happen in very different ways, and both of them, one takes place through a function of erosion, the other one takes place through an almost immediate stop, for lack of a better term. So if it's regime change, you're going to have to bring in somebody who's strong enough to be able to plug the vacuum that's created by the IRGC and some of the other tentacles that exist with Khamenei's infrastructure. But there is a great opportunity there because Khamenei's son, who's the person who's supposed to step in, is very, very weak in the sense that there's a lot of back and forth going on right now, even within them in the IRGC. And then with the destruction of Soleimani from many, many years ago and everything that's happened as a result of it, Operation Grim Beeper, what happened with Hezbollah, what's been happening with Nasrallah, what's taken place in many of these other areas, are all things that very much weaken the ability of Iran to do anything, thus causing sort of what you would call a forced amicable peace situation. Okay. So it's like, Iran, we're going to calm down because Russia told us to shut up. Pakistan's telling us to shut up. Afghanistan's telling us to shut up. That's the kind of thing that we're going to see. We're going to see a forced peace here. And there's going to be some appeasement activity that Iran is going to have to give into with Iraq, especially with the construction of Al-Fah, which is the southern peninsula portion of Iraq, which is in essence going to be the gateway to the Babylon of Revelation 18 that we continue to learn about. Mm-hmm. There's a lot there. And Iran does own some assets, by the way, in southern Israel. And those assets are pretty much guarded. They're untouched, but they're well kept. And they all deal with oil, natural gas, so on and so forth, that is under the legal ownership and control of Israel, but is technically still owned by Iran. And that becomes the carrot that gets toggled for Iran to become a beneficiary with respect to the building up or the bolstering of their GDP, so long as no weaponry is the primary goal of the increase of that GDP. Iran's GDP, by the way, has stayed stagnant for the last 50 years. And right now, it should be far greater than Turkey, far greater than any of the other countries in the Middle East, maybe with the exception, of Israel, only because of the per capita numbers. But they've just gone away. And that's because of the fact that they're spending it on money to kill people and their proxies and so on and so forth. So I think it will be a forced condition is what I think is going to end up happening. That's where the peace is going to happen. Okay, good. I love your take on that. That's fantastic, man. James, real quick, where does it go from here? I mean, what do you think the next step is when we're talking about prophecy? I mean, we got Israel, we got the whole Middle East. What's the trajectory that we're looking at? What's building? What table is being set? I think peace.
Okay.
I think we're going to start seeing some peace. Look, Saudi Arabia is already coming to the conclusion, based on the modern scholars of Islam that are in Pakistan and India, that Islam is the way I'm describing it to you.
Okay.
They are spending a whole lot more time focusing people in other things that are attractive in Saudi Arabia and developing a deeper, more foundational economy and a GDP that's based on a whole lot more than what's religious. As a matter of fact, MBS is already minimizing what he calls the subjective interpretation of Islam based on what they read in the Qur'an.
Wow.
He's in essence minimizing the words of the Hadith. And this is supposed to be the guy who is the waqf of the greatest and most holy site of Islam.
Right.
So you're seeing that. I think that what we're going to end up seeing is we're going to end up seeing a pretty strong peace. And I think that peace is going to be on the Eastern European side, very much controlled by Russia.
Okay.
I think it will expand out into the Middle East. And I think that what's next very likely is an Ezekiel 38 scenario. We could see an Isaiah 17 scenario as well.
Sure.
I think both of those happen either at the rapture or right after the rapture. But I think that's what we're looking at. I think that we're looking at a general peaceful condition that's predicated upon economic incentivization. Look, we just saw a $35 billion deal between Israel and Egypt that just got signed for energy. We're watching one where the Cypriots are doing it in Cyprus with Israel. Turkey is now beginning to seek out some kind of an amicable resolution because they can no longer play on the differences between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which ironically, Azerbaijan is the only, right now that we can see viably, they are the only Shiite nation that actually has an embassy that is in Israel. They have a very good relationship with Israel. And now on the Pat Bet David show, we actually watched Bibi Netanyahu acknowledge the murder, the genocide of Armenians.
Wow.
So we're all moving in that general direction of peace. I think that's where we're going to go.
Gotcha. Man, that is fantastic. Love your take on that. That's fantastic. James, how can people find you, man, if they don't know you?
Okay, if you don't know me, you can go to my website, jameskaddis.com. That's Kaddis. You can go to my YouTube page. There's a lot of people that are making fake James Kaddis pages, so we're trying to get rid of those. Find mine. It's got my name and a check mark. The YouTube handle is at Pastor James Kaddis, but my channel name is James Kaddis. I think at this point, I think we're like just north of a couple 100,000 subscribers. So all these other fake ones only have a few hundred or whatever. Don't follow those. Instagram is under my name as well. All the other places, but on my site you'll be able to find the links to all the radio stuff. You can go to Calvary Chapel Signal Hill.com. We have lightonthehillradioministry.com, which is all the radio stuff that we do, and Countdown the number 2 eternity.com, where you can find out all the prophecy radio shows that we have, which are also all over the world.
James, I appreciate you, man, because you're in the trenches. You're one of the remnant pastors out there that is doing a great job. There's
you too, bro. Thank you.
You know, there's so many pastors that do not have a spine. They will not say what they need to say. But you're the guy that's bold and courageous, and God bless you. Keep doing what you're doing, man. We're all benefiting from it, obviously. And it's good to know that you're in our camp, because you have so much wealth of knowledge about the Middle East and the whole cultural thing.
Yeah, you too. And you did a good job at the Capitol, bro. I watched it. That was great. That was good.
We tried, man. But keep it up, man. We appreciate you, man. And hopefully we're going to get you back on again. There's stuff I still want to dig into with you, man, because you got a wealth of information. And so, guys, make sure you tune in to James and get all on his platforms and get his information. He's one of the best guys out there. Really like James, and I support him, and I want you guys to support him as well. And so remember what the Lord said: when you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time.